As I mentioned, we have people participating virtually, and I am being asked to try to be mindful of the time, as well as the fact that we have a number of really fabulous speakers who are with us, and we want to try to be respectful of the commitments to them. This next part of the program is the keynote address, really, for the conference, and the title is clearly Ghana and Gold. It's a vast and complex question. We are honored to have with us Ivor Agyeman-Duah. In brief, he is historian of the Central Bank of Ghana and director of the, how do you pronounce it properly? Manshaya Palace Museum. That does not do justice to his career. And in your packets, you will find folders. On the right-hand side of the folder, that is the viewers when they are opened, there is a brochure, and underneath the brochure is a full packet of bios for every participant, with the exception of KIFs, which was given out this morning because it came late. So I encourage you, please, to read about Ivor more fully. And with that, I want to say how honored I am to introduce him, and the pleasure that we have in knowing that the issues he raises will continue to be discussed throughout the program. Thank you.
Good morning to you all, and I would like to extend my major debt to you for this invitation to participate in the 15th Gold and Diamond Conference. I will start with what needs to be started with. The country was named the Gold Coast, a designation sustained by successful waves of Portuguese, Danish, Dutch, and ultimately British colonialists, all drawn by the prospect of gold and other lucrative opportunities. To secure their interests, they constructed forts and castles along the 540-kilometer coastline, stretching from present-day Keta in the Volta region near the French-speaking Republic of Togo to Agyeman in the western region close to the border with Côte d'Ivoire, another French colony. Today, these structures collectively remain the largest concentration of historical monuments along the West African coast. The gold trade, and later, the inhumane trade in human beings, defined centuries of interactions between European powers and the peoples of the Gold Coast and its neighboring regions. Unlike in parts of the Americas and island states, where colonial explorers often named areas and cities after monarchs or military figures, as known of the French Minister of Finance under Louis XV in the 1750s, now the Republic of Seychelles, with its capital, Mahé, after another French former governor of Mauritius, which was later renamed Victoria under British rule. The name Gold Coast endured throughout the colonial era. It was only in 1957, with independence, that Ghana's new leaders reclaimed national identity by renaming the country the Republic of Ghana. Over the centuries, infrastructure to support gold, especially the trade, was established across the region, including in the harbor town of Shamar in the western Gold Coast, as early as the 1520s. Around this same period, in the late 1590s, Shakespeare wrote The Merchant of Venice, an early literary exploration of loans, credit, and capital, precursors to the kinds of financial instruments that will later shape large-scale involvement in commodities like gold. It predates modern financial instruments such as hedging and even the concept of sovereign guarantees, which gained prominence during the days of Benjamin Disraeli's British Empire. Internal wars of liberation had been fought among the different groups of people in the Gold Coast from the 1700s and were worsened by the colonial presence and side-taking in trade. Even at that time, local economies used gold dust as its weight for monetary assertion, especially among the Akans of Ghana, and eventually the bigger one among them, the Ashantis, which by the 1800s controlled much of the resources of gold. It happened that the Ashanti, as the people from the area are called, or what is now the Ashanti region, had the largest gold deposits in its southern fields in Obuasi, through which wealth was fueled. It was also the same metal that led to its fall, starting from the 1890s. The unprecedented wealth in gold of ancient Mali and the emergence of Mansa Musa in the Sahel preceded these developments in the southern neighborhood. Beyond its monetary value, as was also the case in other gold-producing states in West Africa, such as Senegal, Ashanti family jewelry was often melted down for economic purposes, in particular for goldsmithing, heirloom redistribution, or in response to crisis. It was for goldsmiths to generate taxable revenue, even in the 1800s. Therefore, long before the colonial economy, the value of gold and taxation for social development existed. The voluntary decision made in 1998 by the women of South Korea, called Gold Collecting Campaign, or Gold for Love of Korea, saw many women donate their gold jewelries to the state to service debt, especially to the International Monetary Fund, and to tame inflation. This became a remarkable story told in economic nationalism, but as far back as the beginning of the second quarter of the 1700s, this was being done to fix deficit and generate growth in the Akan Forest area, in what is now Ghana. It's not surprising that in 2025, Ghana is the largest producer of gold in Africa and is among the 10 in the world. The malleability of gold became part of the independent Ghanaian economy, as was exploitation of other natural resources, which sought or needed a metropolitan capital for industrial growth. Gold prices always fluctuated, but the post-colonial state Nkrumah inherited, that is our first president, had cocoa and gold reserves invested on his behalf by the colonial crown agents of the British government in London, as they did for some of the other former British colonies. They had been affected by low returns and devaluation through hedging at the markets. This meant lower investments for the new economy from the late 1950s. If the young nation will grow on the back of cocoa and gold, it will also depend on its mining and international contracts, with implications on the commodity and price exchange, royalties, and the national economy. This has largely not changed. The Gold Coast became a world producer of gold for years, in particular through its Ashanti goldfields, the first African company to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange in 1999. Other natural resources tagged in, including bauxite, whose exploitation and anticipated aluminium brought the American energy giant Kaiser to Ghana during the Kennedy era in the 1960s. From that time till now, gold has become a global economic facility. But today, there are more than 20 other mining sites and companies, including Newmont and Goldfields in Ghana. Yet, despite its great value, gold alone does not create a perfect economy. Its true relevance emerges only when guided by sound legislation and best practices. I meant its true relevance. In recent decades, numerous studies have sparked widespread criticisms over the environmental impact of natural resource mining, with local and international bodies questioning the ethical basis of economic growth through mining. No concern has been as profound as non-licensed or illegal mining, or what we call galamsey, which is destroying water bodies and leading to waterborne diseases, destruction of cocoa farms, which are our largest source of national income, and agricultural exports for growth. The youth involved in galamsey were up in arms, fighting the police and the Environmental Protection Agency, and contesting laws of operation, that is, mining organizations with imported machinery from China, which is a new dimension to the gold equation in West Africa. Some of the illegalities are, however, perpetuated with the connivance of politicians who also have licenses and use the innocent youth as fodder for the environmental destruction, even at the same time that public pressure mounts on them to review ineffective legislation. In the past, traditional systems and beliefs strictly enforced the traditional authorities and prevented environmental pollution. Proverbs, as Francis Bacon observed in 1594, are the genius, the width, and spirit of a nation. A truth that holds especially for the Ashanti and the Akan peoples of Ghana. The following are two Ashanti proverbs that reflect the values, wisdom, and worldview of the people regarding environmental pollution. The first one: if the anthill has no peace, it is because of the rat. This proverb teaches that a single troublesome person destroys peace in the house. The second one is, if the anthill allows itself to be used as a path, animals will run in and out of it. This speaks to the consequences of being excessively liberal, which leads to people taking advantage of you. And indeed, there have been major ineffective liberal policies in gold and natural resource management as a result of the conditionalities of some multilateral institutions. The economy suffered physical and monetary imbalance, and worse, the ideological dominance of the Western consensus. The legislative history is a long one. Successive governments, through the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank, have in the last 60 years made with many of such. The Art of Parliament, as we have known of it, is a broader framework aimed at regulating the gold sector in Ghana, and its many objectives are to oversee the buying, selling, and export of gold. This act took over the rights, obligations, assets, liabilities, and workforce of what was previously the Precious Mineral Marketing Company, which had been succeeded by the Ghana Diamond Marketing Board in 1963, which became a state enterprise and by 1972 was known as the Diamond Marketing Corporation. In 1989, a military government had a law that replaced the Precious Mining Marketing Company, and at the beginning of this century, it became the Precious Mining Marketing Company. It could be very confusing. In 2016, it became the National Assailer, a role that laid the foundation for the establishment of the Ghana Gold Board in 2025, that is this year. Both initiatives aimed at strengthening industrial regulation and optimizing national benefits. There have been major public policies along these legislative journeys. By the 50th anniversary of the country's independence, at least 10 major mining companies in Ashanti, Western, and the Eastern regions of the country were in operation, including Newmont, Goldfields Limited, and that had joined the Ashanti Gold profile. Kaiser's coming to Ghana, as said earlier, was to add value to that bauxite in the production of aluminium and complement the Volta River Authority that had been established to provide energy for industrial development. The exploitation of magnesium has been a long-standing engagement too. In the last quarter century alone, We have experimented with what a foreign governor and also our own former governor of the Bank of Ghana and Minister of Finance labeled national vehicle to hold all of the government's gold interest, which was to stabilize reserves, and it became known as the Ghana Gold Company proposal. A decade after, there was another Japan Minerals Royalties Limited with an attachment of a minerals income investment fund. In 2021, the Bank of Ghana made a significant strategic move by deciding to purchase gold from local producers in order to build up the country's international reserves, paving the way for the gold for oil or gold for fuel, and the gold for reserve. That is a reserve for the central bank. Many of these were political identities of parties with little strategic differences as endgame. Of the physical and monetary conflicts that often arise, there is another proverb. That is one, not two. This means, and it says, two crocodiles or lizards with common stomach fight over food, yet the food goes to one stomach. Ghana has consistently contributed significantly to its growth with gold, accounting for approximately 38 to 40% of corporate tax revenue, 27 to 30% of total national revenue, and at times up to 7% of GDP. But how come it has not lived up to the expectation of Ghanaians? The first female president of the Ghana Chamber of Commerce, Joyce Aye, once said, governments have focused more on the revenue that will come from mining, rather than using mining as a catalyst for development. We should mine our minerals with the sole aim of using them to develop our economy. Before we give a lease for a mine in a community, we must think of how we perceive or envision the community's development, the region's development, the district's development in the next 20 to 25 years. But if by the establishment of a mine, all we are thinking about is to get revenue, then we are really shortchanging ourselves as a country. The wisdom in this is that gold deposits count for little without financial capital and market control. Of the 10 leading mining companies, none is wholly or majority owned by Africans. Aside the presence of Anglo Gold and Goldfields in Ghana, we have gradually seen assets shift to metropolitan London and elsewhere. It explains why the World Gold Council has offices in China, Singapore, the United Arab Emirates, and the United States, and not one in Africa. Perhaps with the inauguration last week in Accra of the $100 million Black Volta Gold project by Engineers and Planners Company, which is the first scale mine in the country to be owned by a Ghanaian, with financial credit given by the EcoBank's Bank for International Development, the picture may change. To produce 160,000 ounces, which is about 3% of the national output of 4.8 by 2024, may not be much, but the essence lies in what the former president of Anglo Gold Ashanti, Sam Jonah, says. Ownership matters, equity matters. And investment capital increasingly flows from regions beyond Europe, such as the Middle East and Southeast Asia. These are new challenges that have emerged, including of regulation of bodies and gaps, limited or uneven, creating growth that is very timid, and heightened environmental concerns as well. Last month, Reuters announced that Ghana was losing billions of gold revenues due to smuggling from the upward mobility of artisanal mining to the United Arab Emirates. As much as 11.4 billion is the trade gap between Ghana's gold exports and corresponding imports over 5 years. The gold smuggled to Dubai is easier, according to the German Development Agency in Accra, called now Adnan foundation. Because, as it says, hand-carried gold does not have to be declared in Dubai. Informal gold is mostly bought on flights. The smuggling reflects on the political economy of the nearby countries of Burkina Faso and Mali, with recent insurgencies by Islamic fundamentalists and ideological friction with France. The report says illegal or smuggled gold goes through Togo, with some bullions passing through Burkina Faso and Mali. This was triggered by the imposition of a 3% withholding tax on artisanal gold exports, which had to be halved 3 years ago to contain the smuggling, but not to eradicate it. The mirage of gold is, however, enduring, at times forgotten in mainstream economic calculations during volatile market conditions. It, however, has the power to re-emerge as a standard, shaping currency values and influencing the direction of international trade. U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, as we recently saw, also created a situation for the Ghanaian currency that became very stable, with international investment in gold and less pressure on the currency, that is the cedi. Import and export services stabilize. When the currency starts misbehaving, again, I'm sure, the anticipation is that other economic measures should help to restore in sustainable ways the macroeconomic indicators. Refinery companies have evolved over the years, and so have jewelry manufacturers and shops. The World Jewelry Council may not be active in Ghana in a way that reflects the country's prominence in gold production, possibly due to challenges similar to those affecting large-scale industrial mining sectors. Marketing and consumer countries such as Switzerland and other European countries naturally attract greater attention from non-governmental and independent multilateral bodies. However, it took about 50 years after independence for the first refinery, Gold Coast Refinery, to be established in Ghana in 2016. This refinery is the largest in West Africa, handling everything from sailing of dory, bass, to the production of bullions. It operates with massive non-state financial capital and modern technology. Experts and expertise that often come from countries without gold deposits, but with the scientific know-how. And of course, the determination or certificate of what is good or standard from the London Bullion Marketing Association, when we also talk of monetary gold. The development of gold chain, that is also yet to be compared in refinery at the other places and at other times. This is rooted in the fact that goldsmithing and jewelry making have long been part of Ghana's cultural and economic history, predating both the colonial Gold Coast eras and the establishment of the Gold Coast refinery 9 years ago. Traditional methods of sailing gold into specific ships or bars for use as currency reserves were already being practiced by the Ashantis in the 1870s, functioning within a treasury system that resembled a central bank. Some of the traditional sailing techniques were transported to Brazil through the transatlantic slave trade. An industrial application through international partnership should have been on the board. Given that historical significance, their industrial application through international partnerships should have been prioritized in Ghana's development strategy. European envoys, gold traders, historians, and scientists wrote about these traditional gold processing prototypes extensively, and they argued that this could have predicted gold refinery more accurately than that of oil. The vivid 1821 account by the renowned British envoy T.E. Bowditch in Mission from Cape Coast Castle to Asante describes the elaborate jewelry and fine gold and bronze network in particular, the proverbial ornaments that feature what we now universally called or are known as the Adinkra symbols. Consumers included Moles and North Africans. Today, these symbols continue to inspire designs in the jewelry industry and remain central to gold refining and artistic expression across the Akan culture and in West Africa as a whole. Thus, it is no coincidence that there is a big market for traditional gold jewelry in the Ashanti region, as there is for refinery operations and polished ones in other parts of the country. The markets have major Lebanese gold traders who have run businesses in the Gold Coast in Ghana for over a century, transitioning from timber exports to Lebanon and other Middle Eastern countries to telecommunications and gold. Major gold shops in Accra are owned by individuals of Lebanese or Ghanaian Lebanese, Indian, and Syrian descent, reflecting the interracial integration within the gold trade. However, the government has recently introduced measures to restrict non-Ghanaians from operating as gold buyers, in particular from miners and exporters, in an effort to curb smuggling and enforce a policy of requiring mining companies to sell at least 20% of raw gold to the Central Bank of Ghana. It is to help stabilize currency and assure the 1 million Ghanaians working in this industry, that is artisanal miners and others, of their deserved revenue. This is significant in the sense that between 2024 and 2025, the highest production of gold, leading to the country's dominance on the continent in gold production, with South Africa and Mali following, was driven by some of these 1 million small-scale artisanal miners and their operations. In the monetary report of the Central Bank, this led to a 2.2 billion surplus in the current and capital markets, making the country one of the gold industrial leaders. We must again remember to differentiate between artisanal miners from illegal small-scale gold miners. Okay. Reconciliation with the past requires both memory and reimagination of the role of gold in West Africa trade, in particular the trans-Saharan trade, which brought in so much of what we needed. The legacy, that is, this legacy was brought vividly back into the global consciousness last year in Kumasi, when the British Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum returned 32 objects of gold and silver jewelry looted during the Anglo-Ashanti Wars of 1874 and 1896. This restitution story generated global discussion and led to the homecoming exhibition, Adversity and Commemoration, an exhibition at which the Asantehene or King of Ashanti presided. He observed that the objects that had been returned, these gold objects taken 200 years ago, were ancestral acknowledgement of the proof of creative intentions in what was then the Gold Coast, and before the Gold Coast, what was the colonial Asante. The return was to inspire and awaken in the youth a sense of what is possible and to help reimagine a new identity grounded in the rich legacy of the past 200 years. The Menchir Palace Museum is a repository of the returned objects and the general history of colonial resistance, with gold at the center of that confrontation. Approximately 4,000 school children and young people visit the museum each month, contributing to an annual of about 90,000 visits from within the country and outside of the country. A twin contemporary gallery with a focus on gold is yet to be open, and that should be in about 2 months from now. When the British government anthropologists, I'm now looking into some cultural aspects of gold, R.S. Rattray was commissioned to study the Asante in the 1920s, he encountered a dilemma: how to interpret the deep connection between the people, their natural endowments, and the environment, especially gold, and their spiritual beliefs in the God who sent us these gifts, including of gold. He observed their deep reverence for the gold-giving channel, one of the sacred rivers believed to possess human characteristics, and worship on Mondays, in particular because of its gold deposits. For long before men created a path that led to the river, it was in present calmness. Today, that very path has led to its defilement. In the proverbial poetry of our court performance, Rattray interpreted the messages of the Asante talking drama as reflection on the authority of traditional chiefship over environmental stewardship and warnings against undue exploitation well before the second decade of the 20th century. The drama language says, the stream crosses the path crosses the stream. Which of them is the elder? Did we not cut a path to go and meet this stream? The stream had its origin long, long ago. The stream had its origin in the Creator. He created things, pure tunnel. Come here, tunnel. He who devours ramps. Ta, the great one, the powerful one, whom we worship upon a Monday. Ghana's history rests on gold. It has long been the elder, guiding many of its paths from colonial transition to the making of modern Ghana. The future economy will continue to be shaped by gold in significant ways, even as it tests the nation's endurance in pursuit of equitable growth. Culturally, gold remains Ghana's shining symbol, an armory within their titular kinship of the goldfields, bridging the nostalgia of its sacred past with its contemporary brilliance in fashion and identity. We also know that gold is a promiscuous metal, never bound to a single site, never withheld from universal circulation. Its history has always been one of movement and exchange. Today, in the era of transnational economies and mega corporations, this mobility reaches its peak, often challenging national economic sovereignty and local ownership. To conclude with the earlier cited proverb, if the anthill, whether in the forest belt or savanna, allows itself to be used as a path, then animals will run in and out of it. In the end, the economic behavior of the anthill, that is, the state party of Ghana, like other African mining companies, will determine whether these animals pass gently, with mutual understanding and a peaceful attitude towards the environment that holds this gold. Thank you.
Thank you for that. It was extraordinarily comprehensive and very educational. I just wanted to pick up on one point you made regarding the recent substantial purchases by the central bank of growing artisanal production. Is the central bank mindful of its strategic role, therefore, in encouraging responsible ASM when it makes those purchases?
Yes, some of the artisanal miners, small-scale miners, are licensed. There's a difference between the small-scale miners or mining companies who have licenses and those who don't have licenses, the illegal mining companies, as we call them. Once they breach the laws, of course, they have consequences to follow. But with the small-scale licensed ones, there are processes that they go through. And recently, the new government has been in power for 6 years. There's been a tighter control of what gold to buy, where to buy it from, who to buy it from. And so there's a centralized body now, making it difficult for small-scale miners who are not passing through the processes and who are not doing what is expected to get purchase of what they mine.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. This is Christina Villegas. I was really struck by your comments about using the gold of today to kind of plan for tomorrow and the catalytic opportunity that gold can have. And I was wondering what has Ghana been doing, and what do you think Ghana should be doing to be responding to that?
In terms of refinery processes?
Well, in terms of taking advantage of the gold's opportunity. In other countries that I work in, such as Tanzania and Kenya, they've been using their precious materials to start investing in the youth, 18 and above, start teaching faceting skills, so gem cutting or jewelry making skills, and direct trade opportunities. So moving along the value chain of mineral supply chains. And so, but there are also other opportunities, of course, to move beyond minerals. So I was just wondering what has Ghana been doing, and in your opinion, what should they be doing?
Well, it's been a very slow process. If we go back to having an oil refinery in 1963, when we didn't have oil. So the irony of public policy then comes in. You import crude oil, and then you turn this into refined oil. But you've had gold for centuries, and the value of gold and creating a refinery would easily, at the time, bring you a higher revenue. So why do you then engage in this public policy option that is not too beneficial? So from that period to now, has not been the best in terms of gold management. And as I said, the coming into being of a Ghanaian-owned company to engage in refinery, and then to bringing in other experts and other collaboration from those who have the capital to add value to what we mining is very young. We started this not very long ago. And that is why you also see a situation, or you are confronted with a situation where the youth who are unemployed think that engaging in this illegality of destroying the environment because gold or the search for gold is an issue. We've never thought about these deeper issues until the last couple of years. And in fact, it's also affected the bank in terms of supporting government revenue, in terms of what should come as national income to government through the central bank. The decision of the central bank to be very much involved in this by purchasing directly from the small-scale miners started about 2 years ago. And it will take a while before we will know the effect. And even with the strategy that was used 2 years ago, the new government has also added another strategy to it. And so continuity of policy, what to do and what not to do, can sometimes also be an effective weapon against growth. And that is what it is. But then our democracy is growing, and the political economy of choices is what another area that we need to look into.
I had a question, but I just think, Christina, did you get an answer to what you were asking, which was more maybe what the government was seeing as where they would invest the money? It's a new one, is going further. Okay.
Or you meant the money coming from gold and the usage of that money? In terms of the youth, there is an investment, there are youth programs, national in character, and some of these monies have gone into the national service program. So every Ghanaian who does the A-levels will do a national service, and there are state farms that are coming up again. There are investments in ICT, so that between completing secondary school, spending a year, and then going before you go to university, you are exposed to some growth patterns, some innovative ways of seeing how the future will look for you as a youth. And so there have been investments, but the investments have, as you expect of a developing economy, will always go into health, into education, into those critical sectors of the economy that will support growth. Construction of roads, into feeder roads into where the farms and other major export crops are. So it's always an issue of national budget, what goes into what and what doesn't.
Okay, and I had a question, which was, because I don't know it, but what are the conditions for an artisanal miner to access this license to be able to sell their gold? Are there certain criteria, and do you know which ones?
Yes, before you will be issued with the license, you must, of course, have the capital. You must be a registered company, and you must also be able to prove that you have the personnel, the expertise that will be able to help you as a company to do this. There are restrictions on external investment coming into small-scale mining. This is just to protect and to make sure that what comes out of it stays within the community. And you should also be prepared to engage in social responsibilities of the communities where you mine in. So whatever it is that you mine, there are laws, sometimes very strict laws, and there are also regulations within the district assemblies. That is the area where the license has been issued for you to do your mining. That what you get out of that area, some of that should go into the community development in that area. So if you have a mining license for an area A, and you're making that much, what do you use part of your money to do in terms of support for community development in the area? So there is a collaboration between small-scale miners, the district assemblies, and also the government authority within that district to ensure these are done. But those who don't go through these processes become the illegal miners that government is fighting.
So, sorry to hold the mic, but just one question again, and it's following on those questions, I think. Are you aware, or have you been involved in the discussions that we've been having with the Central Bank of Ghana on this idea of principles by which a central bank operates on agreed principles like other central banks? The idea being that we create an ecosystem of central banks around the world buying artisanal gold in a similar fashion, asking for very similar criteria. So is that something you've been involved in or aware of? Yes.
Yes.
I knew the answer, but I'm asking anyway.
Yes. Yes.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I am not sure if I caught the figures from you for how much in value does, in gold jewelry, does Ghana export each year?
Well, that would be very difficult to know, but
Best estimate.
there's a standard board, and before you export these, you have to go through the gold board, the standard board, and they will give you the certification for you to do this. And as I said, the government is coming out with new laws, and then this will even affect the processes of how you export gold. But they are legitimate channels supported by government. Certificates are given for those who do that, who do the export trade. The situation that is being addressed at home is how do we add value internally so that we have the maximum of what should go outside of the economy. How do we empower the gold dealers within? How do we even make the processes flexible enough so machinery can easily get into the country, and then to be able to process some of these. These are some of the growth potentials that we're looking at, but it's a bit difficult to give a figure as to what goes out, because many of these are exported in a raw form. And though many of they have to pass through the London, the Bullion Marketing Association of London. They ensure that the refineries that we have, and we have just 2 or 3, refine these raw gold in the form that will be acceptable globally, and that will pass the test of international gold trading. And so that is assessed, and it's not only in Ghana, it's the routine across all gold exporting countries, that there should be standards as to the addition of raw materials, passing the impurities and